What would you do if one day someone invited you to help with a reburial? But when the coffin was opened, it was completely empty, except for scratch marks made from the inside of the wooden lid? This isn't a ghost story. This is a real journey, where a grave digger named Tuấn accidentally uncovers a secret that had been buried for over 20 years. 3 graves, 1 missing body, a name crossed out of the family registry, and knocking sounds heard every night, always at exactly 2:17 a.m. Who buried the wrong person? Who hid the body of a young woman named Hong? And what was so terrifying that the entire family chose silence over truth? This is a spiritual life story series, where if you stay until the end, you won't forget the quiet chill it leaves behind. Let's begin. The story takes place in Donglang village, more precisely, within the Le family, a clan well known for being large and for having the strangest stories in the region. Back then, the whole village was buzzing because within 3 consecutive years, 3 members of the Le family died. First was old Mrs. Cook, elderly and considered a peaceful death. 2 years later, her nephew Dad, just over 20, took a nap and never woke up. They rushed him to the hospital but he was pronounced dead, sudden cardiac arrest. Then in 2004, Hong, a cousin from another branch of the family, had just opened a tailoring shop for about 2 months. Suddenly developed a high fever for 2 days, and passed away. No one questioned those 3 deaths until later. Strange things started happening to the family. One got hit by a car. One broke a leg in a fall. Another aunt, who had just moved back into the old house, had a sudden stroke within a month. The elders gathered and concluded, it must be Trung Tang, a spiritual belief that the dead were pulling the living to join them. So they called for Tuấn, a man who had performed many difficult exhumations. Known for his strong aura, nerves of steel, and discretion, that afternoon, Mr. Du, a senior member of the Le family, came to Tuấn house. He didn't beat around the bush. He pulled out documents and began telling the story from the beginning. When he got to the part about Hong's death, his eyes welled up, his voice was low, but each word came out clear. Hong was kind, smart, no one believed she could go like that. But ever since she died, our family hasn't been at peace. All the fortune tellers said, the trunk hasn't been cut. We'd like to ask you to help exhume all 3 graves. Maybe we can break this cycle. Tuấn felt uneasy. 3 graves, especially one for a young person who died suddenly, was no small thing. But seeing Mr. Du's sincerity, he agreed. He gave clear conditions, no elaborate rituals, no loud ceremonies. It has to be done during daylight. All immediate family must be present. I do this for the living, not the spirits. A few days later, after the first rainfall of the season had passed, Tuấn and his crew arrived at the village cemetery. The site was at the edge of the village, overgrown with knee-high grass, next to an empty rice field waiting to be planted. The 3 graves were pointed out, side by side, with wooden headstones faded from years of rain and sun. Tuấn observed, then signaled to begin with Mrs. Cook's grave. The first grave, bones were intact. Nothing unusual. The second, Dat's, also in good shape. Just slightly damped. Everything went according to plan. But the third grave, Hong's, was harder. The soil was compact, tough to dig. When they finally opened the lid of the coffin, the whole group froze. It was empty. Tuấn shined his flashlight carefully. No bones. No burial shroud. Just some moldy scratches on the wood. One of the elderly aunts, who had been quietly watching, suddenly dropped to the ground and burst into tears. Oh my God, what does this mean? We buried someone's daughter but there's no one in there? Don't tell me she was buried alive? Everyone fell silent. One of the uncles rushed to calm her down, whispering, lower your voice. This is no joke. Tuấn said nothing. He simply took a photo of the coffin's interior, then told everyone to cover the grave again. After that, he returned alone, inspecting the base of the grave more carefully. The soil at the bottom looked strange. like it had once been dug up and then filled back in. That night, Tuấn stayed at his mother's house near the market, a small home with faded lime walls and red-tiled roof. In the middle of the night, his mother woke him. "Tuấn, get up. Just now I heard someone knocking." 3 knocks, clear as day. Tuấn, half asleep, glanced at the clock. 2:17 a.m. He walked to the door, opened it slightly, and looked outside. No one, just wind passing through the front porch, making the wind chimes swing gently. He was about to close the door when his eyes caught something. Fresh scratch marks on the frame, about the size of a finger, as if someone had clawed at it hard. He said nothing and shut the door, but in his mind, he recalled Hong's death, 2:17 in the morning. Coincidence? Or something more? He didn't know, but one thing was clear. If the body wasn't in the coffin, then where was it? So far, nothing about this story is truly supernatural. But the truth is, when someone dies, there should be remains, and if the coffin is empty, then the question is, are they really dead, or still alive? Hidden away by someone who doesn't want the world to know? That question haunted Tuấn through the night, and would lead him to a secret that for 20 years, no one in that family had ever dared to reveal. Since the night Tuấn mother suddenly woke up after hearing knocking at exactly 2:17 a.m., the house had grown noticeably quieter. She used to complain constantly about wasting electricity, but lately, she had been leaving the living room light on every single night. Whenever Tuấn reminded her, she only said, "Leave it on, keeps the house from feeling cold." Don't ask. Tuấn didn't argue. He knew his mother was strong-willed. She'd lived alone for decades and had never once believed in anything superstitious. For her to be shaken like this, it had to be serious. The next day, Tuấn returned alone to the grave, the one that was empty. No one came with him, just him and a basic set of tools. The soil in Dong Lang was hard, but something was strange about this particular spot. After digging just half a meter down, the dirt suddenly felt loose, as if someone had already dug it up and filled it back in. Tuấn dug deeper, and then the tip of his shovel hit something firm. He gently cleared the soil with his hand and uncovered a small cloth pouch, tied with a faded red string. Inside the pouch was a folded silver sheet, the edges already rotting. He opened it. There were only a few handwritten lines in blue ink, slightly smudged. "If you're reading this, it means she's not gone. Look beneath the well at the end of the field." Tuấn froze, still holding the note in his hand. A breeze brushed against his back. He looked around. The entire field was empty. Only a few white egrets wandered near the water's edge. He knew exactly which well the note was referring to. Back in the day, it was where the whole village came to do laundry. Since tap water came in, the well had been abandoned. No one went near it anymore, not since that one year when a child fell in and died. That evening, Tuấn went to see Uncle Sao Tin, his mother's cousin. He used to dig trenches and drill wells, but had since retired, growing vegetables and raising chickens. When they met, Tuấn told him everything, from beginning to end. Uncle Sao listened, took a long drag from his cigarette, and after a pause, asked just one question. "Are you sure that note was written by someone still alive?" Tuấn replied, "If not someone alive, then who else could have written it?" "Uncle?" Uncle Sao shook his head. "I don't believe in ghosts, but I do believe people who die unfairly tend to leave signs. I remember that well. People used to say stuff floated up in it more than once. But the cops never investigated properly. If you want to dig, I'll take you tomorrow." The next morning, just after sunrise, Tuấn and Uncle Sao wheeled their cart out to the edge of the field. The well sat hidden behind a bamboo grove. Its walls were cracked, filled with rotting leaves. Tuấn climbed down on a wooden ladder, flashlight in hand, his chest heavy with dread. The bottom was muddy but not deep. He scooped a few times, then stopped. A strip of old black fabric appeared, still tied in a knot. From above, Uncle Sao called down, "Anything down there?" Tuấn didn't answer right away. He was unwrapping the cloth. Inside was a bundle of bones. Not complete, but clearly human. What made his skin crawl was the cloth strap still tied tightly around the neck, as if the person had been bound. Beside it was a broken shirt button, embroidered with a rose, the kind Hong used to wear when she was alive. Back on the surface, Tuấn said nothing. His face had gone pale. Uncle Sao could tell something was seriously wrong. He didn't ask, just poured them each a cup of tea and said, "So, what now? Call the police?" Tuấn shook his head. "Not yet. We don't have solid evidence. Just the remains. Anyone could say it belongs to someone else. But that shirt, and that tied cloth, that was murder." Uncle Sao went quiet. "If this really was someone from your own family, then you're not just digging up graves anymore. You're digging up something they buried and wanted left that way." Tuấn didn't speak. That night, he didn't go back to his mother's house. He stayed with Uncle Sao. There was no rain, but the wind blew all night. A few times, as he drifted in and out of sleep, he thought he heard the sound of dragging slippers across the yard. When he opened the door, no one was there, only a broken incense stick lying across the doorway. Tuấn bent down and picked up the stick, his hand trembling. Deep down, he knew there was no turning back from this now. The next morning, Tuấn got up early. He hadn't even made tea yet when someone called from outside the gate. It was Kyla, his cousin on his mother's side, who used to be close friends with Hong. As soon as she stepped into the yard, she let out a sigh. "These past few days, people in the village have been talking non-stop since they heard you're back digging graves. Some say the grave was empty. Others said they saw you sitting alone in the fields all afternoon. Whatever you're doing, don't let your mom worry too much. Grave work like this, those who don't believe will talk nonsense. But it's no easy task." Tuấn poured her a glass of water and pushed it toward her. "I'm not bothered by what people say. But, Kai, you were close to Hong. Did she ever seem upset or troubled before she passed? Something about her death doesn't sit right with me." Kyla frowned, silent for a moment, then quietly replied, "She did love someone, you know that. That boy Kwong. He was from Mr. Le Van Phuc's side of the family. Handsome, quick-witted, but the two of them were forced to break up. One night, Hong cried until morning. She said if anything ever happened to her, someone had to know she didn't choose her fate. That line still sends chills down my spine." Tuấn asked again, "Mr. Phuc, he's the one who arranged to have those 3 graves built, isn't he?" Kyla nodded. "Yeah, he's one of the elders in the family. He paid for the rituals, the headstones, and the workers who built the mounds. But it was strange, when Hong died, no one let me see her face one last time. They said she died from a high fever and it was contagious. The funeral was rushed. No photos, no altar portrait. Everything was done like they just wanted it over with." That afternoon, Tuấn decided to visit Mr. Phuc. His house was at the end of a red dirt alley. Tall walls, and a yard full of ornamental areca palms. Mr. Phuc was sitting there sorting dried tobacco leaves. When he saw Tuấn, he looked up and gave a faint smile. Well, Tuấn, I heard you've been back in the village stirring up old stories. Find anything strange yet?" Tuấn sat down on the stone bench and went straight to the point. "Hong's grave, there were no remains. I didn't feel right, so I came to ask. You were the one who arranged the burials, so you must know something." Mr. Phuc stayed calm. "Sometimes when people die, the body's lost. Maybe it was a mistake, the wrong grave, or kids dug it up. We were in a rush back then, no one double-checked. Don't dig too deep, son, let the dead rest in peace." Tuấn looked him in the eye. "But what if the dead aren't at peace? What if she was never laid to rest properly? Never got to say her last words?" Mr. Phuc's expression shifted slightly. He stood up, brushed off his hands, and said, "You're still young. Whatever you're doing, know when to stop. That's my advice." Tuấn left with a heavy heart. Know when to stop didn't feel like advice, it felt like a warning. That night, he dreamed he was standing before a nameless stone headstone. And behind him, a woman's voice whispered, "I still have something to say. I didn't leave by choice." When Tuấn woke up, the wind outside the porch was howling. No knocking at the door. No shadowy figure. But on the small family altar, the incense stick had burned halfway and snapped clean in the middle. Just that one small detail was enough to tell him, if he stopped now, everything would be buried forever. But if he kept going, he might uncover something that had been hidden for the past 20 years. And Hong, maybe she was still waiting for someone to speak the words she never could. Tuấn couldn't sleep after that night. The snapped incense stick, the dream with the whispering voice, it didn't scare him, but it left him restless. The more he thought about it, the more he realized one thing: if he didn't see this through, then no one else ever would. The next morning, Tuấn stopped by the house of Uncle Tam Duoc, the keeper of the La family registry since the days of their great-grandfather. Uncle Tam was over 70, his eyesight failing but memory sharp. And he was meticulous. The family book was stored in an old wooden chest, locked with a rusty padlock. When he opened it, page after page of yellowed paper showed names of those born, those who had passed, their death anniversaries, all written in violet ink from decades ago. Tuấn flipped to the page for the branch with Ba Kuk, then Dat, and then Hong. Just as he remembered, it listed Hong's birth year as 1975. And her death in 2004. But strangely, under her name, there was a blank field with a half-written line, connected to someone named, crossed out. Tuấn asked, "Uncle Tam, why is this part crossed out?" Uncle Tam squinted at it. "Oh, that part. Back then Mr. Fuck said to jot it down temporarily. I asked once, and he waved it off. Said it was an outsider. Didn't need to be in the family record. I found it odd too, but didn't argue. After that, everyone just forgot." Tuấn copied the sentence down, took the note, and headed straight for Hong's old house. The place had been abandoned for nearly 20 years. The window frames had rotted, the walls sagged, but inside, the furniture remained: a dusty sewing machine table, a picture frame turned face down, and a drawer that was locked. He called Uncle Sao, who used to hold the main keys, and asked for help opening it. Inside the drawer was a tin box filled with letters, notebooks, and faded black and white photos. Among them was one photo: Hong standing beside a tall man in a dark shirt, holding hands. Behind them was a sign: Tan Lock Tailor Shop, Ninh Hoa. Uncle Sao picked up the photo and frowned. "This guy looks real familiar. I think it's Tri, the son of Ba Hai Lok in Ninh Hoa. He came here once to work as a mason for a few months, then vanished." Tuấn nodded. Maybe he was the father of someone's child? Or someone the family disapproved of? Uncle Sao stayed quiet for a moment, then softly asked, "You think this has something to do with the missing body?" Tuấn didn't answer, but his thoughts were tangled like a ball of thread. If Tri was connected to Hong, why had no one in the family ever mentioned him? Why was his name scratched out from the registry? And why, to this day, did no one know where Hong's body was? That night, Tuấn returned to his mother's house. She was lying in a hammock, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Tuấn asked her several times, but she didn't reply. Only near midnight did she whisper, "That night, I saw her. She stood at the foot of my bed, hugging her old pillow. She said, 'It's cold. Why is everyone so silent?'" Tuấn stayed silent. His mother had never spoken of dreams or spirits before. And now, every word hit like nails to wood. His heart sank. In this story, there was someone erased, forbidden to be remembered, and someone who had died, but never found peace. And it might have all begun with a forbidden love, or a child that was never allowed to be born. After hearing his mother tell the story of Hong standing at the foot of her bed, hugging her pillow, Tuấn didn't dare laugh or question it. What he knew for sure was this: The dead don't rest because the living are still hiding something. And if that was true, then the name Tri, the man in the photo with Hong, was the most important lead. The next morning, Tuấn took a long-distance bus to Ninh Hoa. The ride took over 3 hours under the blazing sun. On the bus, he sat next to an old lady selling steamed sponge cakes. After some small talk, he learned that the area once home to Tan Loc Tailor Shop was now a place called Nyat Hoi Electronics. Fortunately, the old house was still there. The new shop owner had only rented the space. Tuấn stood in front of the house. Its roof tiles faded, the walls covered in layers of paint. Inside, a middle-aged woman was sweeping the yard. When she saw Tuấn, she looked up. "Are you looking for someone?" Tuấn greeted her politely and held out the old photo. "Excuse me, this place used to have a man named Tri working as a mason. He was the son of Ba Hai Lok. Do you happen to know where he is now?" The woman stared at the photo for a moment, then replied softly, "Tri? He's gone. Passed away a long time ago. They said he was hit by a car, but his body was never found. Truth is, back then he got involved with a girl from a respectable family. Got kicked out of the neighborhood, then disappeared. Only his mother stayed behind. Ba Hai passed away too. The house was sold last year." Tuấn thanked her and turned to leave, feeling deflated, but just as he stepped out of the alley, an old man called after him, "You're looking for Tri? Come over here. I've got something to tell you." The man led Tuấn into a small, run-down drink stall and ordered 2 iced teas. He spoke in a low voice. Tri was crazy about a girl from the La family. Her people disapproved, but they still kept seeing each other. One time, Tri came back all bruised and said her family had beaten him. He said the girl was pregnant. I remember being stunned. A few months later, Tri vanished. No reports, no papers. Strange. To this day, no one's found his body. Tuấn felt his body tremble. Everything was lining up with what he had feared. A forbidden love, a pregnancy, and then both lovers disappeared, erased. No one ever spoke of them again. On the way home, Tuấn stopped by the market to buy a bouquet of chrysanthemums. Then he made his way to the rice field with the abandoned well. He stood there for a long time, then knelt and placed the flowers at the edge. "Hong, if you still remember someone who once loved you, please give me another sign, so I know I'm not on the wrong path." That night, Tuấn returned to his mother's house. The place was quiet. As he was drifting off to sleep, he heard the sound of dripping water outside the porch. He went to check. It wasn't rain, nor a leaking faucet, but where the water had hit the cement, there was a small footprint pressed into the ground. Tuấn sighed. He wasn't afraid, just deeply moved. When the dead still leave footprints, it means something was left unsaid, and that something might be tied to a child who was never born, and a promise that was never kept. After returning from Ninh Hoa, Tuấn carried with him a mess of tangled thoughts. He didn't have any solid evidence, just a few vague accounts. Some uneasy glances from the elderly, and that small footprint by the porch the night before. But the feeling, as if someone was quietly guiding him step by step, refusing to let go, had only grown stronger. That morning, Tuấn didn't go back to his mother's house. Instead, he went straight to Mr. Phuc's. This time, he didn't call ahead. The gate was open, the yard spotless. Mr. Phuc was watering his plants. "Uncle Phuc," Tuấn said, "I'm not here to ask questions today. I'm here to tell you something. I just got back from Ninh Hoa." Mr. Phuc set down the hose, staring directly at Tuấn. "Well, what did you find?" Tuấn didn't beat around the bush. "I know about Hong and the man named Tri. I know they loved each other. And I know both of them disappeared. But what I don't understand is, why was Hong's coffin empty? And why were you the one to arrange all 3 burials?" Mr. Phuc's expression turned serious. His voice slowed. "Back then, I was the elder of the family. Hong died suddenly. Her family was in chaos. The other 2 had just been buried. No one else could handle it. I felt sorry for her. So I took care of it. Was that wrong? Tuan looked him straight in the eye. What's wrong is that the dead weren't in their graves. And the living have been silent for nearly 20 years. Mr. Fuck said nothing, for a long time. Then he exhaled heavily and looked away. I didn't kill her, but I knew, and stayed quiet. Back then, she brought shame to the family. A daughter, unmarried, with a swollen belly. And he was an outsider. No real job, gambling problems. His grandparents came to propose marriage. And we threw them out. He left the village. Then Hong vanished too. A few days later, someone reported a body in the fields. Cold, already gone, but no one called the police. No documents were filed. I handled the funeral. But I didn't check the body. Tuan clenched his fists. Then, who provided the coffin? Mr. Fuck replied slowly. A carpenter I knew, told me not to worry. Everything would be taken care of. I didn't ask questions. That afternoon, Tuan went to see Uncle Hai Tin, the only carpenter in the village still alive who made coffins back then. He lived near the edge of town, alone. When Tuan arrived, he looked surprised. What are you asking about? Something from back then? Hong's coffin? Yeah, I remember. Someone hired me, never gave a name, paid in cash, gave exact dimensions, but wouldn't let me see the body. That coffin was strangely light. I even joked, maybe they're burying a bundle of straw. Tuan asked, did you see who picked it up? Uncle Hai thought for a moment, then said, I think it was Mr. Fuck. Came by himself on a 3-wheeled cart. No one else was with him. He drove it back on his own. That night, Tuan returned to the cemetery and stood before the 3 graves. The wind howled through the reeds. The moon hung faint in the distance. No one else was there. But when he laid his hand on Hong's headstone, he heard a soft sound behind him, like wind brushing past a sleeve. He turned around. No one. But, lying across the dirt path was a single strand of red string, the kind used to tie ceremonial offerings. Tuan didn't pick it up. He simply bowed his head in respect, then quietly walked away. At that moment, one thought consumed his mind. If the truth had been buried for the sake of honor, then that very honor was what had been dragging the entire La family down. One person at a time. And he, though not a blood relative, might be the only one left willing to dig up what everyone else had worked so hard to bury. Tuan woke up to a morning with no sunlight. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds as if rain was coming, but it never came. One question still clung tightly to his thoughts. Who was the first person to discover Hong's body? And if what Mr. Fuck said was true, that no one ever called the police, then what exactly happened to that body? He remembered something his mother had once said, back when Hong died. Someone had been digging a well near the rice fields. Maybe that was the person who first saw the body. Tuan started asking around at the market. An old lady selling sweet soup recalled. Oh yes, there was a man named Ba Hawk, a well digger. Whatever the job, he and his son dug dozens of wells around here. One time, they were digging and suddenly started screaming. He ran straight to the village hall. After that, he never said another word. Then he disappeared, moved away, no one knows where. Eventually, Tuan tracked down the son. His name was Thang. He now worked as a water pump repairman in a lower hamlet. When Tuan met him, Thang was wary. Just hearing the old story made his face go pale. Brother, I don't dare talk about it. That day, we were almost done digging. The well had just hit bottom when water started surging up, pitch black. I thought it was mud. But my dad shined his flashlight down, then screamed, tossed the light and shovel, and ran. That night, someone came to our house. They gave us money, told us to stay quiet, said if we talked, bad things would happen. I was just a kid, didn't know anything. But after that, my dad quit the job, then suddenly moved us to Ben Luke. Tuan asked, do you know who gave the money? Thang shook his head. I wouldn't dare guess. All I remember was a man on a black motorbike. wearing a cap, never looked me in the face. Gave my dad an envelope and said, "Compensation for something not worth remembering." Tuấn walked away with his head heavy like stone. But one thing was now clear. Hong's body had surfaced. Someone had seen it, but everything was buried again, with money and silence. That afternoon, Tuấn returned to the village cemetery. Standing once more before the three graves, the air was completely still. It was as if the sky itself held its breath. Then, a light breeze passed across his face. Not strong, but it carried a strange smell, musty. Like damp burial cloth. Tuấn turned around. No one, but on the grass beside Hong's grave, there lay a small white handkerchief, dry, clean, untouched by soil, as if it had just been placed there. He picked it up. On the edge of the fabric were two embroidered letters, Th. Hong's initials. Tuấn froze, not from fear, but from the tight pull in his chest. It felt as if everything was speaking to him at once. "I'm still here. Don't let me disappear again." That night, he didn't return to his mother's house. He sat alone in a small watch hut beside the rice field near the cemetery. The moon rose slowly behind the clouds. The sky remained heavy and gray. He lit a single incense stick and stuck it into an old milk can, murmuring, "If there's something you still need to say, then lead me to it. I can't promise I'll fix it, but I won't turn my back on you the way they once did." The wind didn't rise. The night didn't rest. But deep in Tuân's chest, something flickered, like a small flame glowing faintly in a field of dry grass. 1 week after that night in the field hut, Tuấn completed the final task. He carved a small, simple stone headstone by hand, with the full name, Lt. Hong 1975 to 2004. Beneath the birth and death years, he engraved a single quiet line, "The forgotten one, now remembered." The stone was placed right beside the three old graves. Just a single step away. No incense rituals, no elaborate offerings, just a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, a single stick of incense, and one person standing still. Tuấn told no one, no relatives, no villagers, just him, standing in front of the new marker, eyes fixed on the low-hanging clouds above. "You don't have to come back anymore," he said quietly. "I heard you, I saw you, and I believe, from now on, no one will dare erase your name again." He pressed the incense into the earth. The flame flickered gently. Smoke rose, curling into the wind. There were no strange sounds. But that sky, after days of heavy gloom, suddenly cracked open, letting through a narrow beam of sunlight that shone directly on the newly set headstone. Tuấn looked at the light, gave a small nod, then turned to leave. He didn't need any more signs. This was enough. As he stepped out of the cemetery, a soft breeze swept across the rice fields in the early bloom stage. The stalks had yet to sprout grain, but they stood tall, straight as ever. In the middle of the field, a white figure, unclear if human or not, glided past, then faded into the sunlight. Later, villagers would say, ever since that new stone was placed, no one heard the 2:17 a.m. knocking anymore. Tuân's mother slept peacefully again. Kyla stopped having those strange dreams. And Mr. Fuck, after one sleepless night, quietly shaved his head and began chanting sutras at the temple every full moon. The tale of the haunted graves slowly became just a memory. But the name Lt. Hong was no longer missing from the family registry. No longer the one buried in an empty coffin. No longer just a whisper beyond the porch. She was now simply someone who had passed away, but finally, someone who was remembered by her rightful name. And the living, at long last, had listened. Dear friends and kind viewers, if this story made you pause, if it stirred a little quiet in your heart, please leave a comment below. Even a single word, remember, is enough to show that the departed are not forgotten. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, so you don't miss the stories of life, of people, and the things that were once left untold. Every like, every share from you is a way to bring these memories These buried souls, back to life one more time. See you again in the next story, just as real, just as full of meaning, and worth reflecting on.